Hello, everyone. I am Horror Horizon, and I'm here to help you today. I know many of you use this video to fall asleep, so before we begin, make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, let me know in the comments where you're from and what time you're watching right now. Get comfortable, relax, and let's dive into a story that might just keep you awake tonight. If you have any horror stories that have happened to you, please email us. The Cursed Village of Kuldhara. The desert winds whispered secrets through the ruins of Kuldhara, an abandoned village in Rajasthan, India. No one had lived there for over 200 years, yet travelers who passed through spoke of shadowy figures, eerie whispers, and an overwhelming sense of being watched. Ian, a journalist specializing in paranormal investigations, had heard the stories. Skeptical but intrigued, he decided to spend a night in the village, determined to uncover the truth behind its chilling legend. Ian arrived at Kuldhara just before sunset. The village lay in ruins, its crumbling stone houses bathed in an orange glow. The air was thick with dust, and an unnatural silence hung over the place. His local guide, Rajveer, hesitated at the entrance. "I'll take you no further," Rajveer warned. "No one stays in Kuldhara after dark. The curse is real." Ian chuckled. "Ghost stories to scare tourists," he teased. Rajveer's expression darkened. "The Paliwal Brahmins who lived here vanished overnight. No one knows how. But they left behind a curse. Anyone who tries to stay will never return." Undeterred, Ian set up his camp in the remains of what was once the village chief's house. As darkness fell, he prepared his camera and voice recorder, eager to document any strange occurrences. At first, nothing happened. Ian roamed the ruins, snapping photos and speaking into his recorder. The village was deathly silent, save for the occasional gust of wind. Then, around midnight, he heard it, a whisper. Faint at first, then growing louder, like many voices speaking at once. He turned, shining his flashlight into the empty street. Nothing. A chill ran down his spine. Was it the wind? Or something else? He continued walking, but the whispers followed. It felt as though unseen eyes were watching him from the dark doorways of the abandoned homes. He turned on his thermal camera. The screen was clear, until a shadow flickered across it. Ian froze. The figure was human-shaped but distorted, its form shifting like smoke. He raised his camera, but the moment he clicked the shutter, the figure vanished. Determined to find the source of the whispers, Ian explored further. In the village square, he noticed an old well, its stones covered in strange markings. Something about it felt wrong. As he peered into the depths, a sudden gust of wind howled through the village, carrying with it a woman's wail. Ian stumbled back, heart pounding. Then, the ground beneath him shifted. He looked down and gasped. Footprints were appearing in the dust, circling him. There was no one there. His instincts screamed at him to leave, but his journalistic curiosity overpowered his fear. He leaned over the well again, recording with his camera. Then, a hand shot out. Pale, thin, with broken fingernails. It clawed at the edge of the well, trying to pull itself up. Ian stumbled back in horror, but his foot slipped, and he tumbled forward, right into the darkness. Ian hit the ground hard. His flashlight flickered, casting eerie shadows on the damp stone walls. He was inside the well, but it wasn't just a well. It was a tunnel. Bones littered the floor. Human bones. The air was thick with the scent of decay. He picked up his camera with trembling hands, scanning the tunnel. That's when he saw them. Dozens of figures stood in the darkness, silent, unmoving. Their eyes were hollow, faces twisted in agony. Their mouths moved, whispering something over and over. "Save us." Ian's breath caught in his throat. He remembered the legend, how the villagers had cursed this place before they disappeared. But what if they hadn't disappeared? What if they had been buried alive? The whispers grew louder, turning into screams. The figures advanced, their skeletal hands reaching for him. Ian scrambled back, searching for an exit. Then, the ground trembled. The walls of the tunnel cracked. The spirits let out an ear-piercing wail as the tunnel began to collapse. With a final, desperate leap, Ian grabbed hold of a jagged rock and pulled himself up. Dirt and debris rained down as he clawed his way out of the well. He sprinted toward the village entrance, not daring to look back. As he reached his jeep, he heard one final whisper, soft but clear. "You shouldn't have come." Ian never spoke of that night. When asked why he abandoned his investigation, he simply said, "Some stories aren't meant to be told." But something changed in him. He stopped investigating haunted places. He avoided mirrors and shadows, as if afraid of what he might see. And sometimes, in the dead of night, he would wake up to whispers in the wind, calling his name. Because some curses never fade. The lost shipwreck of the SS Kamloops. Deep beneath the freezing waters of Lake Superior, the wreck of the SS Kamloops lies undisturbed, its rusted hull a silent tomb. The ship vanished in December 1927, along with its entire crew. When divers finally discovered it decades later, they found something horrifying, one body, eerily preserved by the icy depths, floating inside the wreck. Some say the man is still down there, waiting. Ben Archer was a seasoned deep-sea diver with a taste for the unknown. When he heard stories about the Kamloops, he knew he had to see it for himself. The ship had a reputation. Divers spoke of strange noises, metal groaning, whispers in the dark. Some even claimed to have seen a figure watching them from the wreck's shadowy corridors. Ben wasn't superstitious. He believed in logic, in science. Ghost stories were for thrill seekers, not professionals. But Lake Superior had its own rules. On a foggy September morning, Ben and his dive partner, Mark, set out to explore the wreck. Their boat rocked gently on the water as they prepared their gear. "You sure about this?" Mark asked. "People get weird down there." Ben smirked. "What, you think a ghost is gonna grab me?" Mark didn't laugh. He just checked his oxygen tank and muttered, "Just don't go inside the wreck." Descending into the depths, the water turned an eerie shade of green. Sunlight faded, and the world became silent except for the sound of their breathing. Then, through the gloom, the Kamloops appeared. The ship was still intact, covered in a layer of silt and rust. It looked frozen in time, as if waiting for something. Schools of fish darted in and out of its gaping portholes. As Ben approached, he felt an odd pressure in his chest. Not from the depth, but from something else. Something watching. Mark motioned for him to stay close. But Ben had other plans. Ignoring his partner's warnings, he swam toward a doorway leading inside. The darkness beyond was impenetrable. His flashlight beam barely cut through the murky water. That's when he saw it. A shadow moved deep within the wreck. Ben's breath hitched. He turned, signaling to Mark, but his partner was already swimming away, shaking his head. Ben hesitated, then entered the ship. Inside, the ship was eerily well preserved. Rusted equipment lay scattered on the floor, and old crates still bore the faded markings of cargo never delivered. Then, he saw the body. It floated upright, arms outstretched, the face grotesquely frozen by the cold. The skin was pale, almost waxy. Eyes open. Mouth slightly ajar, as if trying to speak. Ben had seen preserved corpses before, but something about this one was wrong. Its eyes moved. Ben jolted back, his breath quickening. No. It had to be the current, his mind playing tricks. Then the body twitched. And its mouth whispered, "Leave." Panic surged through Ben's veins. He kicked backward, bumping into a metal beam. The ship groaned, a deep, hollow sound that vibrated through the water. A sudden rush of bubbles surrounded him. Something unseen tugged at his gear. Mark's voice crackled through his headset. "Ben, get out. Now." Ben turned, frantically swimming toward the exit. The ship seemed to shift, the corridors growing darker, closing in. His oxygen gauge flickered wildly. Then, just as he reached the opening, something grabbed his ankle. A hand. Rotting fingers wrapped around his boot, pulling him back into the wreck. Ben kicked hard, his foot breaking free. He shot upward, his vision tunneling as fear overtook him. Bursting to the surface, he gasped for air, clutching the side of the boat. Mark called him aboard, his face pale. "What happened down there?" he demanded. Ben just stared at the water, his mind replaying the sight of the floating corpse, its lips still moving as if whispering secrets meant for the dead. Ben never dove again. A month later, another diver exploring the Kamloops reported something disturbing. A new body had appeared inside the wreck, wearing Ben's lost dive boot. The Black Tunnel of Odessa. Beneath the city of Odessa, Ukraine, lies a vast labyrinth of catacombs, thousands of miles of tunnels, some still unexplored. Over the years, people have gone missing inside, lost in the endless darkness. Some are never found. Locals whisper about the Black Tunnel, a section of the catacombs where time distorts, shadows move without light, and something watches from the abyss. No one who enters alone ever returns. But Anton wasn't afraid. Anton Morozov was a skeptic. A historian and urban explorer, he had spent years documenting abandoned places. The Odessa catacombs fascinated him, their history, their mystery. One night, after a few drinks, his friend Ivan made a dare. If you're so fearless, prove it. Go to the Black Tunnel. Spend the night. Film everything. Anton laughed. Easy. Armed with a flashlight, camera, and extra batteries, he entered the tunnels alone. The deeper he went, the colder it became. The damp air smelled of earth and decay. His footsteps echoed endlessly. The Black Tunnel wasn't marked on any official maps. It was spoken of in hushed tones, a place only reckless explorers or the desperate ventured into. After an hour of walking, Anton reached the entrance. His camera recorded everything. "All right, here we are," he muttered. "Let's see what all the fuss is about." The tunnel was different from the others, narrower, the walls covered in strange markings. Symbols. Warnings. His flashlight flickered. Then, from deep within the darkness, he heard it. A whisper. Anton froze. The whisper wasn't the wind, it was a voice. Low, urgent, impossible to make out. Then, the walls shifted. No, not the walls, the shadows. They moved. Anton turned, ready to leave. But the tunnel was no longer the same. The path he came from had vanished, replaced by another identical corridor. His breath quickened. He checked his compass. It spun wildly. Something was wrong. He turned back toward the Black Tunnel, toward the whisper. He had no choice. Anton pressed forward. The air grew heavier, thick with an unnatural silence. His camera picked up flickering distortions, shapes that weren't there. Then, his light caught something ahead. A figure. At first, he thought it was another explorer, until he saw its face. There was none. Just smooth, pale skin stretched over where eyes, nose, and mouth should be. It stood motionless, as if waiting. Anton staggered back. The whispering grew louder. The thing moved. Panic surged through Anton. He ran, turning blindly down corridor after corridor. The tunnels twisted, rearranged. No path looked familiar. Then, ahead, light. A way out. Anton sprinted toward it, heart pounding. Behind him, the whispers became a roar, the sound of countless voices merging into one. Stay. He lunged through the exit. And collapsed onto the cold stone floor. When he looked up, he was back at the Black Tunnel's entrance. Hours had passed. But his camera. His footage showed something impossible. Himself. Still inside. Epilogue. Anton never spoke of that night. He left Odessa, abandoning his career, his obsession. But sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, he swore he heard it again. The whisper. Calling him back.